When I refused to fund my daughter-in-law's lavish trip, she slapped me, revealing a shocking truth about our family's connection. Claire felt the stinging sensation echo across her cheek like a thunderclap. The disbelief settled into her bones, a cold reminder of a moment that had spiraled out of control. In the quiet aftermath of that slap, all she could see was her son, Mark, standing by, his eyes wide with shock, caught between love for his mother and the woman he was about to marry. In a single instant, Claire's world shifted. Claire, 62, had poured her life into nursing, years spent tending to the sick, holding hands with patients during their darkest hours. Her days were filled with the comforting routine of her small Midwestern town, where honesty and hard work were virtues she'd carried from her parents, celebrating resilience over luxury. Now, standing in the living room with the smell of fresh paint lingering in the air, she faced the biggest clash of values she'd ever experienced. Veronica, her intended daughter-in-law, floated in from a world drenched in privilege, an atmosphere ripe with designer names and extravagant expectations. The very idea that Veronica would dare ask her to fund a honeymoon felt like a slap to the principle that Claire had lived by all her life. "I'm not paying for your vacation," she had said, trying to keep her voice steady, but the words had tumbled out as both disbelief and hurt lodged in her throat. How could this woman, who had known opulence all her life, not understand the importance of working hard to earn something worthwhile? But Veronica had retaliated, frustration boiling over in that lethal moment. Claire's face burned, not just from the physical shock, but from an internal turmoil that threatened to unravel her entire being. Images of all the late shifts, midnight emergencies, and unconditional support flooded her mind. She had sacrificed so much for her family. How could this woman dismiss those sacrifices as unimportant? With each moment of tense silence, Claire felt the weight of loyalty pulling her in one direction while her principles tugged her in another. The thought of losing Mark tormented her. She envisioned their family dinners, what once was laughter now tangled in awkward silences and barely masked resentment. Would he understand her? Would he choose her values over the comfort and ease that seemed to lure him towards Veronica? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As Claire paced across the room, her mind was a volatile storm, questions darting through it like fireflies. Was it even possible to accept Veronica's lifestyle? The slap had awakened something deep inside her, a layer of resentment revealing itself like peeling paint on an old wall. She envisioned who Veronica really was beneath those designer clothes, the struggles for approval and acceptance within her own gilded existence. But would it matter? Would that understanding change anything? As decisions loomed heavy before her, Claire grappled with a terrifying thought. This wedding might just tear them all apart. She needed to examine if loyalty to family was worth compromising what she believed. And just when her thoughts reached a breaking point, Mark walked in, concern etched on his face. Claire's heart raced. Each breath accumulated tension. Would he side with the woman who represented everything she rejected? Could love truly hold them all together, or would it ultimately fracture them? Claire felt the silence swallow the air, each passing second stretching painfully as Mark remained uncertain. The way he stood, half in the doorway, half in the turbulent sea of his two loyalties, made Claire's heart ache. What was he thinking? Did he see her fury or simply a mother's pain? The slap had cut deeper than skin. It had torn at the very fabric of their family's unity. Finally, Mark moved closer, his eyes narrowing as he took in his mother's unsettled expression. "Mom, what just happened?" His voice trembled slightly.
Claire felt a rush of frustration and sorrow. She had never wanted to become a source of conflict. "Mark, she asked me to pay for her honeymoon. Can't you see what that means?" Claire's words came out sharper than she intended, emotions spilling over. "I've spent my whole life working hard. This entitlement, it's not what I believe in." Mark's brow furrowed, his inner conflict visible. "I know, but you can't just refuse her like that. It's an expensive trip, sure, but it's supposed to be a celebration. Why not just help her out?" "Help her out?" Claire echoed, incredulous. "Help her out and what? Give up my values? Sacrifice the things I've taught you about hard work?" The weight of her words congealed in the air. She could see Mark's expression flicker. He was trapped between respecting her mother's principles and wanting to support her fiancé's dreams. Then something shifted in Claire, a small awakening amidst the turmoil. The truth was, she had always prided herself on giving to others, especially her family, but had she ever expected to be paid back in lavish experiences? She didn't want to be the villain in this tale. She wanted to guide them toward a shared understanding of value. But how could she communicate that without pushing Mark away? "Mark, think about it. Veronica is from a world of spoils. She doesn't know what it's like to work for something, to sweat and sacrifice."
Claire paused, hoping her words would resonate. "You can have a beautiful celebration without it costing the earth." Mark crossed his arms, contemplating her perspective. "But that's her view of happiness. Who are we to dictate what happiness looks like? Why can't we take a step back and see it from her side?" A fleeting moment of realization hit Claire. Was she being hard-headed? She had spent her career empathizing and listening to others. Now it felt as if she was losing that ability within her family dynamic. The clang of doubt shifted into determination. Claire needed to become an example of bridge building instead of division. "Maybe I'm missing the forest for the trees," she admitted, her voice softer. "I see your point, but I can't shake this feeling. It's like I'm being pushed aside and our values are being mocked." Mark approached her, the tension between them beginning to fade. "I understand. I think what you feel is important, but we can't throw all of us away for one hiccup. Can we sit down with her? Talk it out?" Claire nodded slowly, the ache in her chest beginning to shift into a spark of hope. Perhaps there was a way forward, a way to stand firm in her beliefs while also opening the door to understanding. The idea of guiding this conversation brought a new sense of purpose, a chance not just to save what was left, but to build something stronger. But as they began to plan, a nagging fear still lingered, a shadow lurking at the edges of her thoughts. Would shifting her approach lead to unexpected resistance from Veronica? The time had come to confront not just her future daughter-in-law, but also her own capacity for change. Claire steeled herself for what lay ahead. Would she uncover hidden truths about herself in the process, or would she simply end up compromising all over again? Claire watched as Mark stepped back, the doorframe now clearing a path for both of them to confront the tempest inside. The uncharacteristic silence of their home seemed to amplify the sound of her heart, which raced not just from the conflict, but from the unfamiliar territory before her. "No more avoidance," Claire muttered under her breath, directly confronting herself more than her son. The words felt strange, a declaration of intent. She was done tiptoeing around emotional minefields. Instead, she would dismantle them, piece by piece. She inhaled deeply, her breath matching the resolve building inside. "Let's talk to Veronica," she said, lips tightening into a firm line. "But we need to be transparent. I can't go into this without an understanding of what I want to express." "Just remember to listen," Mark urged gently, a reminder woven with support. "You both may want the same thing, just from different perspectives." Listening. The burden of her past expectations seemed to whisper against the walls, recalling a self she coveted, a nurturing figure who understood what others needed without being burdensome or forceful. Yet there she stood, unyielding, a fortress flanked by principles, yet sometimes blind to harmony. Claire took a moment, envisioning the scenario ahead. Nothing could impede her values, but perhaps this was not solely about defending them. It was a chance to model adaptability for Mark, to show him how negotiation could blend passion and compromise. She had always taught him that communication was essential, yet she feared she was now reduced to a player in her own family drama. With purpose set, they moved towards the living room, where the air hummed with residual tension. What if she takes this poorly? Claire's thoughts flared, as if igniting a small spark of anxiety deep in her core. What if she dismisses my values entirely? Then we deal with it, Mark replied firmly, together. The unity in his voice soothed Claire, but also ignited an urgency. This was not simply about her relationship with Veronica, it was about their evolving family, and ultimately her allowing herself growth. As they prepared to meet, Claire took inventory of her feelings, nervousness, hope, and an undercurrent of triumph. She was going to approach this encounter open-mindedly and wielding resilience instead of resistance. No more just defensive postures. This was for her family, her legacy. Moments later, Veronica arrived, her confidence painted on her face, a stark contrast to the brewing uncertainty inside Claire. But with every breath, Claire steadied herself, focusing on creating an atmosphere primed for understanding rather than confrontation. Mark, let's start with some boundaries, Claire suggested, a tactical approach forming in her mind. She noted how both women's strengths were not in conflict, but could possibly intertwine. But as the conversation unfolded, Claire sensed an unexpected bitterness from Veronica, layers of defensiveness shrouded in entitlement. Every attempt at clarification felt like a step deeper into murky waters. Suddenly, Veronica's voice rose. You think I'm just some spoiled brat? That your son should be punished because I asked for something nice? Claire's composure wavered, a tornado of frustration and determination colliding in her mind. This was it, the culmination of self-discovery and its ramifications unfolding before her. She had expected a conversation rooted in kindness, yet it was evolving into a negotiation ground. Could she maneuver through this storm? As awareness dawned on Claire, a new realization struck her. Perhaps the challenge before her wasn't merely Veronica's view of celebration, but a reflection of her own rigidness about what was appropriate. Would she find a way to reconcile values with love, or would she falter under the emotional weight of the moment? In that charged atmosphere, Claire felt pressure mount. Clarity merged with uncertainty, and the path diverged at each breath drawn. The stakes escalated, and now more than ever, adaptation was not simply needed, it was imperative. Would she embrace the discomfort and grow, or cling to the walls she had built around her beliefs? The next turn in her journey loomed ahead, the outcome undecided. Would facing a potential adversary reveal more about her own convictions, or lead her down a path of painful resistance? Claire's mind raced as she listened to Veronica's accusations swirl in the air, thick with tension. The emotional tempest brewing within her pushed and pulled, stirring uncertainties and a desperate urge to protect not just herself, but her son as well. You have no idea what it's been like for us, Veronica spat, her voice strained and sharp, punctuating Claire's thoughts and blocking any space for a calm rebuttal. Claire was taken aback. This wasn't what she had anticipated. She had hoped for an exchange that could lay the groundwork for understanding, not an escalation into hostility. With every instinct screaming for self-preservation, Claire tightened her grip on her values. But then she looked at Mark, who stood anchored and resolute beside her. His presence was a reminder of the bigger picture, the roots that tied them together amidst the storm. She took a deep breath, aiming to quell her own rising frustration. Veronica, I don't believe you are spoiled, and I'm not punishing you. I simply want us to discuss what's fair considering all our circumstances. The change in her tone seemed to momentarily break through Veronica's defensive shell, the raw emotion in her eyes flickering with uncertainty. Claire recognized that beneath the anger lay a vulnerability in need of validation. This could be the shift she needed, not just in this conversation, but in her approach to navigating conflict. "What do you want?" Claire questioned, genuine curiosity lacing her voice. "Tell me what the core of your feelings is." The pause that followed felt monumental. Claire watched as the layers of Veronica's bravado slowly peeled back. There was disappointment etched into her face, a longing for acknowledgement, perhaps for belonging. "I don't want to be seen as an outsider," Veronica admitted, her voice softer, almost cracking. "I thought marrying Mark would mean acceptance, not exclusion." In that single moment, Claire felt a shift within herself. She had always focused on defending her position, wielding her beliefs as shields, but had never considered how they might simultaneously isolate and disengage others. Was her protective nature driving a wedge between them? Claire's heart raced with the realization that this confrontation wasn't just about Veronica's demands, but about her own rigidity. What if her insistence on boundaries overlooked the very essence of family she wanted to uphold? "Let's redefine what this looks like for us," Claire proposed, her voice gaining an air of authority tempered with empathy. "What if we created space for both of our needs?"
"Your desire for celebration doesn't undermine my values, and I want us to find middle ground." Mark's gaze bore a mix of pride and relief. Claire could sense him rising alongside her, embracing the guidance of resilience together. Veronica hesitated, searching Claire's eyes as if mapping out the sincerity behind her words. The bitterness had dulled. It seemed she too craved that harmony, subconsciously tethered to their conflicting perspectives. "Are you really willing to consider my feelings?" Veronica asked, vulnerability creeping back into her voice. "Yes, we need to communicate," Claire replied, the confidence in her newfound path solidifying. "We all want to feel valued, and that includes you." As the conversation progressed, a flicker of hope ignited between them. Each point raised built a bridge rather than a barricade, reshaping their dialogue into a constructive exchange. Yet even amidst progress, Claire felt the thrum of uncertainty thrumming beneath her composed exterior. Would opening up initiate a wave of discussions that would lead to deeper misunderstandings? As each woman began to share, Claire recognized how fragile their aspirations were, yet simultaneously exhilarating. But just as Veronica began to elaborate on her vision for the upcoming occasion, Claire grew mindful of an unsettling realization. It was still critical for her to maintain her identity within this evolving dynamic. Would she allow her values to soften in the name of compromise, or could they coexist without being diluted? As the conversation unfolded into deeper discussions, Claire felt the crossroads arrive again. With every word, she oscillated between self-preservation and adaptation, standing on the precipice of both fear and growth. Yet the moment of truth resonated, revealing another layer of her complexity. Claire was no longer just in defense of a notion, she was weaving herself into a familial fabric that required flexibility and strength. The air buzzed with new understanding, yet Claire recognized her journey had just started. Would she navigate this newfound harmony without losing herself? One thought lingered as the tension morphed into potential resolution. What would happen when their next conversation would inevitably arise? Would she call upon the courage she unearthed today, or revert to her old patterns of resistance? Claire sat on the edge of the living room couch, the unsettling weight of the conversations still buzzing in her mind. The air felt thick, almost electric, as she processed what had just transpired between her and Veronica. She didn't want to dismiss the progress they'd made, but feared the fragility of their newfound connection. A relationship built on delicate threads needed care. One misstep could send it unraveling. Mark entered with 2 cups of tea, a loyal support in these tumultuous moments. He took a seat beside her, the warmth of the tea urging Claire to confide in him.
I felt like we made progress today, but what if it's just temporary? What if I'm just setting myself up for more conflict down the line? Her voice wavered, the hard-earned confidence still being tested by her insecurities. Mark stirred his cup slowly, considering her words. You didn't just defend your values, you opened the door for both of you to be heard. That's not easy. If you retreat now, it might close that door again. His words hung in the air, a reminder of the importance of persistence even in the face of doubt. Claire nodded. She was grateful for his perspective, but uncertainty coiled in her stomach. The idea of being vulnerable again, exposing her feelings, felt daunting. This wasn't just about her and Veronica, it was part of a greater narrative of family dynamics and the roles they each played. You know, I keep thinking if I can just stay firm on my beliefs, maybe I won't get hurt, she confessed, her hands gripping her cup tightly. But in doing that, am I also excluding others' feelings? Am I building walls instead of bridges? Sometimes strength is found in bending without breaking, Mark pointed out. You can have your values while also being flexible enough to listen. Claire mulled over his words. She recalled how vital it was when she allowed herself to see Veronica's vulnerability. Until now, Claire had viewed her as simply an adversary, but beneath the surface was a woman longing for validation of her place within the family. As they spoke, Claire felt a flicker of resolve spark within her. She could channel their dialogue into preparing for the next conversation. Perhaps she could outline her boundaries while also welcoming constructive input. It would require courage, but there was also the promise of deeper understanding. The next day brought a new challenge. Claire set an agenda to meet with Veronica, willing to carve out a space where both could voice their needs. What if I acknowledge her point of view while still asserting my own? She thought. It felt precarious but necessary. Growth was rarely born from comfort. On the way to meet Veronica, doubt settled in again. What if Veronica rejected her efforts? What if they fell back into hostility? Claire gripped the steering wheel, fighting against the creeping anxiety. The transformation she sought depended on her ability to remain genuine and unwavering. As she parked and walked towards their meeting spot, Claire contemplated the familiar push and pull between her desire for harmony and her instinct to guard her identity. This delicate dance would require clarity and conviction. She couldn't allow herself to disappear in her pursuit of connection. Arriving at their meeting place, Claire took a moment to breathe deeply. Today was not just another engagement with Veronica, it was an opportunity to weave strength and vulnerability together, a chance to sculpt a relationship that could withstand challenges.
But just as she approached the table where Veronica waited, Claire caught a flicker of something in the younger woman's expression. An unresolved tension hung in the air, hinting at an unvoiced concern that threatened their progress. Claire felt her heartbeat quicken. What was it this time? The moment called for boldness. She could either confront this tension head-on or let fear dictate her response. The stakes of this encounter had never been higher. With her mind swirling in anticipation, Claire surprised herself with one final thought. Was she ready to dive fully into discomfort to uncover the truth? As she took her seat, her resolve would soon be tested in ways she hadn't anticipated. What profound revelations might lie just beneath the surface? Claire settled into her chair, the sound of the bustling coffee shop fading into a distant hum. Across the table, Veronica's eyes flickered with uncertainty. Their previous conversations had emerged from a place of shared tension, but today carried a weight that felt different, a kind of potential that was both enticing and terrifying. "Thank you for meeting," Claire began, attempting to quell the tightness in her chest. She needed to set the tone, to show that this would be a conversation of mutual respect, not confrontation. "I really want us to talk about how we've been connecting, or perhaps not connecting, I should say." Veronica's gaze dropped to her untouched coffee. "Sure, but I don't know if you're interested in hearing my side," she murmured, hesitating as if the words tasted bitter.
Claire could feel the divide, a chasm formed by experiences and misunderstandings. "I am interested," she pressed, holding her breath. "I promise to listen, really listen, and I'll do my best to share my own perspective. That's all I want." A flicker of vulnerability crossed Veronica's face as she leaned back slightly, folding her arms. "It's easy for you to say that now," she countered, the edge in her voice betraying her apprehension. Claire fought against her instinct to retreat, the memories of previous altercations simmering just below the surface. "It's true," she admitted openly, "but I'm trying. I want to understand how we've reached this point, Veronica. I care about you, and I care about this family." Veronica's expression softened, if only slightly. "It feels like you've never really accepted me. It's always been transactional, like I have to prove myself." That struck Claire with uncomfortable clarity. Was she truly seeing Veronica as a person worthy of connection, or merely a function of family dynamics? She leaned forward, her resolve hardening. "But what if," she hesitated, searching for the right words, "what if my past reactions reflected my own insecurities? Can you allow me the chance to try to erase that impression?" For a heartbeat, silence enveloped them, allowing the tension to thrum in the air. Claire's mind raced with the implications. Here was the opportunity to break the cycle.
"What do you need from me?" she asked, her voice steady but gentle. Releasing a shaky breath, Veronica met her gaze. "I want to feel like I belong without conditions. That's what you have with the family. I want that too." Her voice trembled, opening a door to the vulnerability Claire had only glimpsed before. Claire felt the weight of her own guardedness. She nodded slowly, visualizing the path forward. "Then let's carve out that space. I want to work towards allowing you to become part of this family, not through obligation, but through acceptance." Tension nascent with potential hung between them, shimmering like heat in the desert. There was nothing easy about this exchange. It tested her willingness to remain open, to confront her fears and biases. As they navigated the difficult conversations ahead, Claire began to grasp the strength of vulnerability. The realization that embracing discomfort was a necessary step towards deeper understanding grew more potent within her. But just as Claire felt the stirrings of hope, an abrupt shout erupted from across the cafe. A couple at a nearby table argued heatedly, their words laced with accusations that echoed too closely to her own. "What do you even know about family?" the man yelled. Claire instinctively flinched, the scene reminding her uncomfortably of her own familial tensions. The distraction drew Veronica's attention, an ephemeral flicker of fear crossing her face. "See?" she whispered, her earlier resolve wavering. "It's like we can't escape it." Maybe that's part of it. We're surrounded by family conversations filled with anger, misunderstanding, but we can choose something different. Would they acknowledge the patterns that trapped them both, or would the external conflict disrupt their fragile connection? Claire's heart raced as she sensed the balance catalyzing their moment of growth. However, the deeper question lingered. Could they truly rewrite their narrative, or would the shadows of past resentments continue to haunt them? Claire's pulse quickened. What lay ahead could redefine her understanding of family and belonging, but first they had to confront the shadows. Claire's heart thudded in her chest as she processed the abrupt chaos surrounding them, the sudden tension diffusing the fragile connection that had begun to form between her and Veronica. The couple's heated exchange faded into a blur as she focused on what lay before her, the opportunity to grasp a deeper understanding, to foster an actual bond rather than a mere facade. Veronica's gaze darted back to her, confusion lacing her features. So what now? The weight of the unspoken hung heavily between them, echoing the subtle fears that wrapped around Claire like a suffocating blanket. "We keep talking," Claire replied, challenging herself to maintain the open-hearted honesty she had initiated. "What we're feeling right now is real, but it's also part of a cycle we can break, don't you think?" Veronica chewed her lip pensively, a hint of skepticism flickering across her face. "That's easy for you to say. You don't bear the weight of your past decisions like I do," she countered, the tremor layered within her words illuminating the cracks beneath her assumptions. The layers of regret and unspoken resentments that had sculpted their interactions threatened to bubble over. Claire realized she had to be transparent about her own journey to create a dialogue filled with mutual authenticity instead of predetermined roles. She straightened in her chair, the warmth of the coffee shop now a catalyst for her growing determination. "You're right," she admitted, "but I'm not expecting you to carry anything more. I want to lay it all out on the table. A look at what's been and what can be. We can rewrite our own script." A flicker of hope emerged in Veronica's expression. "You think we can do that?" she asked, her defenses faltering. "Why not?" Claire found herself leaning into the discomfort, embracing the volatility of the unknown. "Building a relationship takes intention. We have to be willing to be vulnerable. I need to ask questions, and you need to express what you feel without worrying about judgment." "What if you don't like what you hear?" Veronica pressed, a hint of fear creeping into her voice. "That's a risk I'm willing to take. I think we both owe it to ourselves to try." In that moment, the sunlight filtering through the cafe window caught Veronica just right, casting shadows that danced across her face. Claire saw the maternal glimmer within her, a woman ensnared in the quest for belonging, just like herself. As the noise of the cafe faded further into insignificance, Claire recognized a turning point. It was more than a simple conversation. They were stepping into an arena fraught with emotional shrapnel, where the past loomed large, yet felt surprisingly manageable when examined side by side. "I guess I need to let go of some of my defenses," Veronica confessed, finally, voice softening. "And I will stay open to your honesty, even when it's uncomfortable." With every word exchanged, Claire felt the heaviness of her own fears dissipate slightly. Accepting vulnerability was just as essential for her as it was for Veronica. The thought was bold and daunting, but it felt right, an opportunity for personal growth entwined with relational healing. Yet just as Claire envisioned the way forward, the earlier argument erupted again, a volley of harsh words slicing through the atmosphere. The male voice shouted, "You're just faking it all for show." The accusation resonated, a direct echo of self-doubt that sent Claire's heart racing again. Suddenly, the path ahead felt less certain. Were they genuinely capable of dismantling their defenses, or would the shadows continue to mask their true selves? What if they were too entrenched in their fears to build something real? Claire's mind reeled as the uncertainty mirrored her internal landscape. The confrontation brewing just outside their table was a reflection, a challenge urging her to either align with her newly forged commitment or shrink back into the safety of silence. Would she rise to the occasion and push through the fear? The moment hung delicately, teetering on the edge of transformation, with the chaos of the cafe pressing in on every side. As they navigated this treacherous ground together, Claire felt the stirrings of determination. The time had come to face not only the shadows of their past, but also her own emerging truth. What lay ahead was an awakening, or the unraveling of what they had only begun to forge. Claire's pulse quickened as the tension around her thickened. The taunting words from the couple nearby became a distant roar, eclipsed by the pounding in her ears. Each shout cut deeper than the last, but they were not just sound, they were a reflection of what she herself feared. What if vulnerability was a mirage? What if the open hearts she wished for didn't exist? She drew a shaky breath. This was her moment, a crucible forging a new path. "Veronica," she said, anchoring herself in the eye of the storm, "let's redirect this, right here, right now. Let's decide who we want to be, not just as individuals, but together." Veronica's eyes widened slightly, as if Claire had tossed a lifeline amidst waves of chaos. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice softer, threading through the turmoil like a song. "I mean we can choose to rise above this," Claire insisted, gesturing to their surroundings, the din of anger competing with their burgeoning hope.
Let's share our truths. We know pain, we know passion, we know fear, but we can also understand joy, resilience, connection. But we can't get there without honesty. You expressed your doubts, and I need to share mine too. Veronica's gaze drifted, evidently weighing her options. It was a paradoxical moment, one where Claire could feel her own truth pressing against the walls of her being. She had always sidestepped the emotional heaviness, but now she craved release. I was terrified of letting anyone in. I thought that if I built walls high enough, I could shield myself from disappointment. But what I realized is that those very walls kept me feeling lonely, and I think you understand that. She watched for acknowledgement in Veronica's eyes. I do. The admission hung in the air, charged with a newfound energy. I've pushed everyone away because I thought the less I let them see, the less they could hurt me. Exactly, Claire affirmed, feeling her heart swell with purpose.
But if we never allow anyone to see in, how can we ever find what we've been searching for? The sense of belonging, the love. It's frightening to be exposed, but if we don't take the risk, we could miss out on something incredible, perhaps something we both need. As Claire spoke, she felt pieces within herself click into place, feeling the fractal echoes of her fears blending into a resolve. It wasn't merely about vulnerability, it was about reclaiming her narrative, her right to express herself, to stand firm against the chaos swirling around them. Veronica took a deep breath, her demeanor shifting slightly. What if we get hurt again? What if it's worse than before? Claire noted the raw honesty beneath that question. It mirrored her own lingering apprehension. That's always a possibility. It's a risk we both face. But if we don't try to do better, we'll be stuck with our regrets. Haven't we held on to enough of those? Why not let this moment be a starting point instead? For Claire, the words were not only comforting Veronica, they resonated deeply within her, igniting a flicker of hope she thought was long extinguished. The confrontation outside faded as their resolve solidified, creating a quiet space brimming with potential. "We could be a team," Veronica whispered, finally giving voice to the prospect of their shared journey. "But it means I need to be completely honest about everything." "I'm ready," Claire replied, steeling herself for whatever revelations would come next. But as they locked eyes, a loud crash erupted from nearby, breaking their solemn moment. A glass shattered, sending ice cubes skidding across the floor. Claire's heart raced, her thoughts spiraling back into uncertainty. Had the willingness to open up brought them any closer to breaking free, or were they merely teetering on the edge of disaster? Straining to hear over the noise, Claire couldn't shake the nagging worry. Would this effort be the beginning of meaningful change, or another cycle of pain? As she wrestled with the answer, the storm of emotion inside her bubbled over. What if uncovering their pasts only tore them apart? Would their budding connection withstand the light of truth, or would it fracture under the weight of reality? The answer loomed, vacillating between promise and impending doom, as chaos loomed around them, threatening to drown out their fragile beginnings. Claire's heart thrummed in a chaotic rhythm, caught between dread and determination. The chaos surrounding her felt like a physical barrier, a tempest that threatened to swallow her and Veronica whole. But in that moment, Claire refused to yield. She was ready to confront whatever lay ahead, compelled by a visceral urge to forge an authentic bond. "Let's take a step back," Claire said, vulnerability coiling tightly in her chest as she spoke. "We can't allow this to overshadow what we're trying to build. Can we move past the noise out there?"
We have a chance to face our fears and emerge stronger. Veronica hesitated, the wariness in her eyes flickering. What if this doesn't work? What if it backfires and we wind up even more broken than before? Every endeavor carries that risk, Claire replied, masking her own internal trepidation. But what choice do we have? It's either remain prisoners of our walls or dismantle them and learn.
If anything, this will be a lesson about ourselves and each other." Veronica nodded slowly, the uncertainty beginning to melt away as newfound resolve formed. "Fine," she breathed, her voice trembling with the weight of her agreement. "Let's share our truths then. But I need you to know, I'm scared." With this admission, Claire felt a warm rush in her chest, recognizing a kindred spirit navigating the same turbulent waters. "I'm scared too, but it's okay. Being scared doesn't mean we can't be brave." As Veronica leaned in slightly, the tension began to thaw. "Fine, I guess I'll go first. I've held back so much of my past. After my last relationship fell apart, I thought I'd never trust or love again. It shaped everything I've done since." Claire zeroed in, intrigued. "That's huge. I can see how that would affect you, but I promise you, you won't be judged here. Just like I won't judge myself anymore." Encouraged by Claire's response, Veronica began to unravel more of her story. Each confession ignited a flicker of understanding in Claire. With each layer Veronica peeled back, Claire felt empowered to confront her own fears. It was a dangerous dance they engaged in, one where vulnerability met bravery head-on. "I've spent so long trapped in a cycle of fear and avoidance," Claire admitted, embracing the moment. "I've worried that if I let people in, they'd see my flaws and leave. I thought I could just push through and be strong alone, but the truth is, I'm not as strong as I've convinced myself I am." "Maybe none of us are," Veronica mused, her newfound honesty radiating openness. "But admitting it is the first step." Claire felt her throat tighten as she connected with Veronica's fears. This honesty amplified their bond, replacing isolation with shared power. They were individuals tangled by harsh experiences, but together they could cultivate resilience. "We need to push each other," Claire said firmly. "This is about more than revealing our histories. It's about carving a new narrative for ourselves, for this team we want to become." "I want that too," Veronica agreed, determination sparking in her gaze. "But we need to make sure we hold each other accountable. Truth-telling should lead to action, otherwise it's just words." "Yes," Claire affirmed, the insight cutting through the chaos. "We need active commitment to growth, no more stagnation." Gradually, they found a rhythm, building a foundation based on mutual understanding and assertive honesty. It felt terrifying, yet exhilarating, like navigating an uncharted path filled with promise.
Just when the storm outside began to quiet, the clarity within their chaos sparked a deeper question. Could they sustain this newfound commitment when outside pressures returned to threaten them? The warmth of their connection burned like a beacon, setting the stage for revelations about their pasts and the challenges that lay ahead. Claire's heartbeat quickened, clarity sharpened her focus. They were on the brink of something transformative. As the dust settled around them, Claire asked, her voice steady, "What will we do when our pasts catch up with us? Are we really ready to face it all?" The shadows of uncertainty loomed, and Claire braced herself, sensing that the real work was only just beginning. The sun poured through the cafe windows, illuminating Claire and Veronica's table as they prepared to confront both their individual struggles and their shared future. The tension surrounding them had transformed, now infused with hope, a flickering flame ignited by their willingness to be vulnerable. Claire felt a surge of determination. This was not just a moment of truth, but a crossing into a new realm of connection. "The fear of our pasts doesn't have to define us," Claire said, her voice steady, echoing a newfound resolve. "We can choose to learn from those experiences instead of letting them dictate our relationship." She glanced at Veronica, whose expression mirrored her own inner turmoil, but also held a glimmer of anticipation. "What we're working toward is a commitment, a growth pact, but we also need to assess how we can protect ourselves while allowing our bond to deepen." Veronica nodded, visibly gathering strength. I want to make this work, she declared, her tone firm yet laced with vulnerability. But I need you as my ally, not just when things are good, but especially when they're tough. Can we agree to check in with each other periodically, a sort of emotional audit to make sure we're both feeling heard and valued? Absolutely, Claire replied, excitement bubbling in her chest. This was an echo of the collaborative care she had devoted her life to during her nursing career, only now being directed toward emotional well-being. We have to remember that even in difficult moments, we can find space for understanding. As the ideas flowed, Claire felt each sentence strengthening their bond, chipping away at the barriers that had kept their relationship confined. Each time they shared, their connection flourished, a steady foundation beginning to form. For every fear acknowledged, there was empowerment. For every struggle, a shared commitment to overcome. Let's not just explore our fears, Claire accentuated, invigorated by the dialogue. Let's also talk about our dreams. What do we envision for this family? How do we contribute to each other's happiness? Veronica's eyes sparkled with newfound energy.
I want to build traditions that celebrate both our backgrounds, where we maintain our identities while accepting one another fully. Imagine family gatherings where we blend your values with my approach to rejoicing in life. Claire felt warmth wash over her, picturing the vibrant celebrations that could stem from their partnership. They could create a space that balanced hard-earned principles with an appreciation for joy and ease. It was a tantalizing prospect, life together not merely as coexistence, but flourishing in multifaceted harmony. I've always envisioned a family that thrives on respect and love, Claire mused, relishing the freedom blossoming between them. That means allowing space for all emotions, for laughter and tears. It requires staying connected despite disagreements. If we build this bridge, it will ultimately lay the groundwork for our family's future legacy. Veronica leaned in, the shared vision creating a palpable bond. I think we're already making strides. Our willingness to face our fears is proof of that. It means something. It signals that we can redefine our roles within this family. The air bristled with possibility, sparking a determination not only to respond to individual needs, but to create a cohesive family spirit. Claire felt solid confidence branching out through her thoughts. This was not merely a conversation, but a turning point in her life. It was about transcending her protective walls to allow acknowledgement of each individual's worth within their shared unit. As they crafted their commitments, the noise of the cafe became mere background, a reminder of the world outside, waiting with its chaos, while they consciously chose to dwell in understanding and openness. Every word exchanged solidified Claire's belief that she was not just a mother, but a collaborative leader in this new family dynamic with Veronica. Later, as they closed their meeting, Claire felt an overpowering sense of achievement. They had conquered fear through communication and laid plans for ongoing growth. They were on the path toward creating an unforgettable familial bond that would flourish through future challenges. I can't thank you enough for this, Veronica expressed, gratitude boosting the emotional connection while binding their commitment. As they embraced, Claire realized how far she had come. From that disheartening slap, she had shifted her focus, navigating through tumult to genuine understanding, ultimately embodying the very principles she cherished. She was no longer a mere protector of her own values. She had emerged as a force of unity and resilience. It wasn't merely about adapting for the sake of another. It was about acknowledging her own growth as they intertwined their paths, fulfilling not only personal aspirations, but also nurturing a legacy worthy of their shared vision. Claire stood tall, pride radiating within her. Let's take what we've started today and continue to shape it. They stepped into daylight together, filled with a sense of purpose and anticipation for all that lay ahead. Now is the time for you to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support this transformational journey. Comment your thoughts, insights, and theories about the story's conclusion. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who would benefit from this powerful resolution. You need to show your support. This is the moment to engage. Don't wait even one more second.